welcome to Over the Boards with Mike Gazzillo. I'm Drew Blevins, along beside the man behind the mustache, Coach Mike Gazzillo. As always, Over the Boards is brought to you by Moe's Southwestern Grill. You can visit them at moescatersraleigh.com for all of your Moe's needs. Coach, thanks so much for being back with us this year, third season of the show.
Yeah, it's great. Thanks for having me.
Well, best way to start out is all the way back at the beginning. NC State right now holding a 4-1-0-0 record, and it all started back on September 19th against the Elon Phoenix. It was a power-packed game, offensively punctuated, a 10-2 win. Coach, is a great way to start the season. How do you explain such a huge victory?
Well, the guys were all excited about playing, and there's really no lines that were together last year. So, there's like a renewed sense of anticipation with how much can we do, and we had a really good crowd, and the guys were all excited about it, and they came out and they showed it.
And indeed, it was a huge crowd, Coach. 437 people was the final tally. That may look a little bit small compared to some other ACCHL attendance totals, but how big did it look in the new arena at the Iceplex?
Yeah, I was during one of the breaks in play, I looked around just to see, kind of get a gauge, and I was like, this place looks pretty crowded, considering it's so much bigger than RCI area. I figured the crowd was probably bigger than anything we had. And that was sort of a last-minute game. It's not like it has the advance like Wilmington or Carolina does. So, yeah, we're expecting big things from those games.
And, of course, you talk about the crowd size, but perhaps the most intriguing thing on ice is the ice size. The Iceplex is the one Olympic-size arena in the Raleigh area. How do you have to adjust your strategy to playing on bigger ice?
Well, it's just we sort of changed some things in a forecheck, or we changed some things in a regroup because you've got a little extra space. And then, like for this particular weekend, going into Wake Forest and Charlotte, where we're playing on NHL size, so we just shrink things down and practice a little bit. So I know that when we went and played JMU, was the first game we played on NHL size, and I asked the guys afterwards how they felt about it, and they thought it was better because they were on things quicker. Things were happening quicker, and that was a JMU team is an aggressive team, not in a bad way. They're clean, they hit hard, they're a very good team, and that kind of worked to our advantage. Having that extra skating in.
And heading up to play the Dukes, it was quite a different outcome. Although NC State does have the victory, you go from winning 10-2 to coming all the way back and having to really scrap for a 4-3 victory in that first road game. What does that show about your team?
Well, I was quick to point out to the guys that Elon had really been on the ice probably for about 2 practices. They start later than we do. Paul had a lot of freshmen playing, guys that didn't play in the last game we played against them. And we were supposed to play Wake Forest, and then it was kind of a last minute, they couldn't make it, and Elon picked up that spot. So I don't necessarily know that. I don't want to take anything away from our guys and how they played, but the reality of it is I don't know how prepared Elon was for that particular game. When we went and played JMU, much different situation because they were prepared for it. And again, they are a good team. We saw them last year. It was a 1-goal game with them last year too. Very fast, very aggressive, clean. So I'm not surprised it was a lot closer of a game, and I also kind of told them when we play Elon again, don't expect a 10-2 game, and obviously it wasn't.
No, without a doubt, but before we get to that second Elon game, NC State comes back home to the Iceplex for the annual Stephen Russell Memorial Tournament, this year pairing up with the ACCHL as the season opening tournament for league play. And who else to open up the season with but the ACCHL defending champions, Georgetown, which is quickly becoming a rivalry game for NC State. What does it mean to be able to get that victory over the Hoyas 7-4?
Yeah, that was something that the guys who were on the team last year and lost that finals game talked about with the new guys. They weren't around for the importance of it, so they were pretty much stressing the importance of it. First period, I thought we played well. I wouldn't go any further than that. I thought we played well. Second period was just terrible. We just really got outplayed, and the guys recognized it, and they were talking about it, and I just really sat back and let them sort of try to work it out on their own. And then we just discussed some of the things that needed to be taken care of going into the third period, and they came out with a very strong third period. So I know they really wanted it, and they had to show it then, and they did.
NC State finished the game with 3 unanswered goals in the third period. But going back to an earlier comment you made about the second period, we had expected the game against Georgetown to be a very defensively minded contest. Going all the way back to November of last year, NC State wins the game 4-2. In the ACCHL Finals, Georgetown wins the game 4-2, which is defensive scoring for this level of hockey. However, both teams came out very offensively minded, and it was 4-4 at the end of the second period. How does that affect a team's psyche going in expecting a defensive matchup and then all of a sudden having to play solid offense?
Actually, I think it worked out well because there were opportunities there, and both teams wanted to go out and dominate the other team. Both teams wanted to show, we wanted to show, hey, last year was a fluke, don't expect that to happen again, and they wanted to come in and say, hey, last year wasn't a fluke, this is what you're in for. So, we both know both teams have good goaltending, both teams have good defense, so you got to win the game offensively at that point, and both teams were throwing everything they could to the net, which creates those scoring opportunities. So, I mean, you knew going into that third period, after it got to be a tie, we knew it was going to be the team that came out that was more prepared for the offensive push that was going to win the game, and that's kind of how it worked out.
So NC State does get their third victory of the season against the Georgetown Hoyas. However, they have to turn around and play the very next night, the late game at 9 p.m. against the University of Virginia Cavaliers, a team the Wolfpack did not see last year except for on the road. Coach, Virginia comes out and all of a sudden just finds a way to mastermind the Wolfpack style of play, engineering themselves to a 6-4 victory, snapping NC State's 31 home game winning streak. That's a tough loss to take, especially in your own tournament. How does that affect the team going forward?
Well, I mean, the reality of it is you want to win every game, but you know it's not going to happen. And you just have to pick up, have to address the things that didn't go right during the game in practice and change some of those things going forward. And that's, really all we did. Our third period, we had a very good third period. But we can't just keep coming back in the third period, And the guys, they know what they can do. They know what they're capable of. But, you got to put that one behind you and you got to move on.
Now, one thing that was very, very interesting, as you alluded to, the comeback in the third period of that game, Alec Engel takes a major penalty with 2 minutes and 47 seconds remaining in the contest. A questionable, at best, penalty to take, considering the delivery of the hit was clean. But that goes into a larger point. Last year at Raleigh Center Ice, the officials were very quick to call penalties pretty much out of fault. Anything stick work, hooking, tripping-wise, and also body-checking penalties. These officials have tended to be more lenient. How does that affect the flow of the game?
Well, sometimes with officials, you never know what you're going to get. And that's just the bottom line. And what I tell the guys is they have to play, the other team has to play with those rules too. So don't get confident that you can get away with things because you got away with them in one period. It just takes the official to make the decision that he's going to start changing the course of the play. We do have a different officiating crew. I think it's worked out better overall throughout the league. The coaches all have to evaluate the referees every week, and so that's been much more positive than it's been in the past. Granted, it's still kind of early in the season. But, you go out and you play your game and you see how they're calling it. And then from there, you just continue to move on. If they're calling it tight, you may have to make some adjustments to the way you approach your forecheck or any, checking situation, in that matter. Also, you have to sometimes expect that you're not going to get, maybe if you get tugged or something like that, they're not going to call it. So you have to be able to, play through it instead of expecting the hand to go up. So, I mean, these guys have all been playing long enough to know that sometimes you got to do things on the fly, and that's the way it's kind of gone.
And it's difficult to tell, having only played one road game, but taking an average of 2 penalties at home compared to what road officials may want to call, how does that affect the way your team has to play physically when they're trying to lay those body checks and perhaps getting called in different arenas?
Well, I mean, if you make the check and it's clean, there's nothing to worry about, right? I mean, that's the first thing we talk about. Just, play hard, play clean. If there's some questionable calls, well, there's not really much we can do about that. But again, you just have to go out and play your game, and I did talk to them, and I did say, you got to understand that from one game to the next, it may not be called the same, and so don't get complacent in what's going on with the refs. Just go out, play the game, play it clean, and we'll be okay.
The next game for the NC State Wolfpack was only last Saturday as they took on the Elon Phoenix at home, this time in the ACCHL for the standings, and this game turned out to be much bigger than anybody would have expected. Elon was actually holding the Carolina Division lead inside of the league. NC State had to win to take sole possession of it, and indeed you do that, but in a little bit more of a defensive struggle this time.
Well, again, we knew it wasn't going to be a 10-2 game. We knew that we had seen them play in the Russell tournament, and we had known that they had players in that game that they didn't have in the game that we played them. Again, that was also a last-minute game, and that was also their fall break. So Paul used more freshmen, more new guys in the first game. So we knew that it was going to be a different situation. We outshot them almost 2-1, and if you watch the game, I mean, I counted at least 12 shots that we had good scoring opportunities, that the shot went wide, the shot went high. We had 3 posts. Danny Fredenberg got kind of robbed on a breakaway. I mean, that guy made a great save. I mean, I would have expected Danny to score on that, and that guy snapped that glove out. So in that sense, we did have a lot of offense. It just didn't bounce our way, and just keep plugging. Eventually it'll go in, and that's what happened.
And that guy you're referring to is goaltender Colin Langham, who is one of the league's best right now. You see him instead of Garrett Johnson. You get Max Musselman instead of some of the other freshman players that you would have seen against Elon the first time. But going back to Langham, opposing him on the other side was somebody NC State fans may not be used to seeing, and that was Calvin Stone, a new goaltender to the team this year, essentially taking the spot of Eric Murbach, who played so well last year. And Calvin Stone comes out and clearly proves himself as a Wolfpacker through and through. What did he do to help win that game?
I mean, he was so focused on it. He played the JMU game, and again, I mean, we'd play against him when he played for Wilmington, so I knew he can play. The focus that he had, where he puts the rebounds, is big. The communication with the defenseman. He came up big on a couple of saves. I mean, they didn't get as many shots, but they got a lot of point blank shots that he really came up big on. And the guys feed off of that. Everybody feeds off of that on the bench when he comes up big. And Calvin is definitely a proven goalie. He may be new to the team and to Division II, but he's still very solid. And the guys love playing behind him.
Well, not only that, he's coming from a UNC Wilmington team that you will face very, very soon here on November 1st. That's a high-packed emotion game for him, as well as some other players coming from the Seahawks that are looking to play back in Raleigh. Do you expect to start him against the Seahawks?
We haven't really crossed that bridge yet, so I guess I'd probably not say anything. But I know that he wants it, and with the strong showing that he's had now, we have a game on against Wake on Friday. Nick's playing, and we have Charlotte on Saturday, and Calvin's playing. So probably just evaluate how things go, and then I'll look to see what I'm going to do in the next 2 or 3 weeks.
Right, and these upcoming games are so vitally important. You mentioned Nick Camaras not very long ago in your previous comment. What has he meant to the team? He's played 3 of these games now, all of them at home, and yet has stood out once again, defending that title of ACCHL Goaltender of the Year last year. He continues to be dominant. Can you talk about him a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, he's got really good leadership skills, and he goes out and he plays his game, and his game is strong. Guys know that he's showing up every game, and he's going to compete at a high level. Again, the guys love playing behind him. Him and Calvin get along well, which is always good when you got your 2 goaltenders, because the reality is if someone's not playing well, we're going to wind up replacing them. So they do know every time they go out and play, they're going to have to perform, or we're going to have to move it along. But yeah, I mean, like I said, Nick's solid. You know, he talks to the guys in practice. He talks to the defense during the game. We know what we got with him, and everyone's very confident playing behind him.
Exactly, and of course, he is earmarked by his outstanding goalkeeping. We'll be coming back after a short break here. We'll be talking about the upcoming schedule for NC State, as well as some more individual player accomplishments. You're watching Over the Boards with Mike Gazzillo, brought to you by Moe's Southwestern Grill. Back after this.
Welcome to Moe's! Check out our menu. Choose from a variety of fresh ingredients. Check out our salsa. Watch your burrito being made. Enjoy. Moe's knows catering, burritos, tacos, and more.
Welcome back to Over the Boards with Mike Gazzillo right here on Wolfpack Sports Television. Drew Blevins alongside the head coach of the NC State ice hockey team himself. And as we spoke of earlier, now we're going to get into individual accomplishments throughout the course of the season, as well as the upcoming schedule. And Coach, let's go ahead and start with that schedule. You spoke earlier of the upcoming games at Wake Forest and at UNC Charlotte, the first back-to-back road test of the season. That can really test a team's psyche and really give a gut check time for this Wolfpack team. How do you see that going?
Well, you know, we can't take Wake Forest lightly. We talked about that in practice this week. It's a league game. We have to put our best foot forward, and then we're coming right into a game against a tough Charlotte team. You know, we always have very good games with them, and you know, we have had some situations where we've had some breaks, like maybe only playing one game and stuff. But the second half of the season, a lot of it is back-to-back. So guys are going to have to come out. They know what they're going to do on Friday. Game plan really isn't much different. Maybe a little personnel change for some of the guys on Saturday. But, you know, it's good for them to get on the road, too, especially the new guys, you know, and see how other rinks feel. And I think we're mentally ready.
And after that, you come home to kick off the 11th month in the year, November 1st, against the University of North Carolina at Wilmington Seahawks, a team that NC State hasn't seen in a while. And then, of course, the big one, the rivalry game against the University of North Carolina on November 7th. Mark your calendar for that one. It's a two-game homestand against two quality opponents this year. North Carolina has improved tremendously. Yep. Those are big games for NC State.
Yeah, North Carolina especially, they got a new coach. So there's a renewed want to win, let's call it. I know a lot of people have seen that Admirals Cup, and they're kind of using that as incentive. But Jeff's he's really kind of sparked that team. They picked up a couple of guys, and that's kind of what happens in college hockey, right? You know, things up and down from season to season. But yeah, that's going to be a real big game. That'll be a very good test for us.
Indeed, and of course, Matt Geltley from the North Carolina Tar Heels is the third leading scorer in the league. His brother actually plays on the North Carolina Charlotte team that NC State will host later in the season and see on the road. And then NC State, right after playing North Carolina, the next weekend goes to High Point University, the newest addition to the ACCHL this year. Not a lot known about them, but what do you think of the Panthers so far?
I mean, they had a real good showing at the tournament. Some of the guys were on the All-Star team that I coached in that tournament. So I kind of got to see what they were doing a little bit. I really didn't get to see the team as much as I would have liked to. But again, we don't want to take anyone for granted, and you know, we're going to go in there expecting a very good game from them. And as long as we play our game, I can't really worry about what the other teams are going to do. We just got to have our game plan, and we got to go in focused on doing that, and then we'll let the chips kind of fall where they may.
And rounding out the month of November, the Wolfpack ice hockey team will take to the road to go up to Louisville, Kentucky to play against the Louisville Cardinals twice, and then a matchup against the Tennessee Volunteers. That is a very long-distance road trip comparable to the way NC State normally travels, having to stay in Virginia and the Washington, D.C. area. Those are big matchups, Coach. How do you explain those?
Well, I mean, we've been in touch with Louisville in the past about trying to put games together, and it just kind of never happened. Tennessee came to us last year and said, "Hey, would you be willing to come back to us next year?" And I said, "Yeah, absolutely." And so we wound up. The only way I could really do it was the 2 games in Louisville and then hitting Tennessee on the way home. I normally don't like to do 3 games in a weekend. But, we have that's going right into Thanksgiving, and we've got a couple of weeks off, and I thought it might be a good idea for the guys to just get, a long weekend in, and then they have a little bit of a chance, focus on their studies a bit, and then, the time with their family for the holidays.
And what it also provides is a little bit of a break from league play before heading into the long break into end of November into December. Coming out of that break always seems to be a little bit of a sketchy dealing. After having these games, getting out of league play, having to re-enter very, very quickly, how does that break affect a team?
Well, normally what's happened in the past is after the Thanksgiving break, we were playing another game or two, with maybe a couple of practices. And the team it never really worked out well. I think once the guys go home for Thanksgiving and they start getting, the holidays and they got their exams and then they're focused on Christmas, I think their mind is gone from hockey for a little bit. So that's why I stopped it before, right after the Thanksgiving break. When we get back, we've got Virginia Tech and we have Liberty the following night, which is going to be a tough weekend. But I did that because we're going to be off for so long, and then we have so many ACC games that I want to really emphasize for the guys. They need to stay in shape. They need to stay on the ice where they can, do whatever they can off ice, because when we get back, it's back to business right away. And so having 2 tough opponents that aren't ACC, I think would really give the guys something to shoot for, and it'll give us a pretty good indication of who's done what over the offseason.
And of course, our next show will recap highlights from all of these upcoming games that will, of course, then be in the past as we head right into January in the heart of ACCHL play. Looking at the team individually now, Coach, some new names out on the squad that have already made an impact: Will Bieberdorf, Sam Banishevitz, Jack McDonald, a freshman, is the actual team leader in goals with 3 of them. These are new and young, fresh faces. How have they added to the team?
Every one of them we got Mike Cram, we got Matt Valillo, Calvin, although he's not a freshman, is still, new. Andrew Kristoff was just flying around, him and Will working real well together. As you mentioned, Sam and Jack, I got them with Mackey. So Mackey's he's a senior, he's got that good leadership ability. They're all excited to be here. They came in, they saw 30-plus guys trying out, and they made it. And they know that if they want to, stay playing, that they're going to have to compete every week, and they're making the best of it. They're having a lot of good scoring opportunities. I'd like to see some more offensive production in terms of getting some points, but we're getting the opportunities. And so thinking back to a couple of years ago when we had a kind of a slow start and we had a lot of new guys, we were getting the opportunities. The puck just wasn't going in, and just be patient, just keep plugging, it'll happen. And then we had a really strong second half. So I expect that when some of these guys start having some of their breakout games, when the line's together, I think you're going to see some much more scoring production.
And of course, the other freshman on this team is Chris Wing, who's also played a couple of games as well and has made an impact on that back defensive line. Looking at the statistics here, though, the team points leader is a very familiar name to Wolfpack fans, and that's Tom Stryker. 6 points on the season thus far, co-captain on this team. Such a leader. What does he bring to the table?
Yeah, Tommy's solid defensively. He's a big voice on the bench and on the ice and in the locker room, and even in practice, getting the guys together and making sure that we know what we're doing as far as drills and stuff like that. He does present some offensive opportunities, which is fine because I encourage the defense when they have an opportunity to go offensive. And we've been getting the forwards to come back and cover for him. And he's trying to make things happen, so you can't fault him in any way for that. So not all of his goals are coming from the point. Some of them are coming on the offensive rush, which is a credit to him.
And of course, we've already talked about it briefly, but the goaltending parity, Calvin Stone, Nick Camaras, both are putting up league leading statistics in the net-minding category. Calvin Stone pitching a shutout against Elon only last weekend. What do these two goaltenders bring to the table? Because right now they're looking like they could run 1-2 in the statistics.
They bring a confidence to the team in net that, no matter how we're playing, we feel that they have our back. We feel that they're going to be strong in net. So if we're not having a good defensive series, or we're not putting the puck in the net, we feel that there's confidence that they are going to keep us in the game, and then from there it's up to us to perform to the expectations that they're setting by playing the way they're playing. And it's fueling the desire to get more offensive opportunities, and it's fueling the desire to play better defensively, which, that's exactly what we're looking for from them.
And sometimes those goaltenders are going to be called on to make absolutely huge stops, especially with the dawning of this reawakened ACCHL offense. All of a sudden, NC State, Georgetown, Navy, they're not the dominant powers anymore. It could be very easily, you could see 2 or 3 new teams going into the playoffs this year. Does this speak to a new league parity in Southern hockey?
Yeah, I think so. I think the league is growing. Not only by taking teams in, but the ACCHL is kind of getting out there. Things like the show, things like Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff. It's getting guys energetic about coming out and playing for their respective schools. The schools where, as a couple of schools only had maybe enough guys coming out for a team, now they're making cuts. I know there are a couple of teams that have some guys that were players that weren't playing because they're not really doing too good. They're not really in a good league. And then all of a sudden things have changed, and now they're getting those guys out, and they're making an impact on their team, which is making an impact in the league. So, yeah, I think you're seeing a much better quality. I think it's going to be, you're not going to have always the strong and the weak. I think you're going to see a lot more balance, and it's going to make for some very competitive games.
And of course, that will increase attendance because fans like to see the competitiveness. And that was actually put on showcase right here in Raleigh at the end of the Stephen Russell Memorial Tournament with the All-Star Game put on by the ACCHL and Commissioner Mike Wally. You were the coach for the Southern team. What did that event mean to the league?
The guys came down for the tournament, and we had the skills competition, and there was some skepticism about how it was going to go, and guys that were skeptical about it, when they saw it and how it played out, and they were all like, wow, I can't believe this was so great. Then we had the All-Star Game, and each team threw their top guys at one another, and it was a close game, and it was back and forth end to end. No penalties, which is good. A lot of scoring opportunities, good goaltending on either end. It gets guys. Now you're against him one night, and now you're on his line on this particular time, and guys get to talk in the locker room, and then when you get out and you play the game, there's a little bit of, I know this guy, or I know that guy, and they also see what the other guys are bringing to the table, as far as their game and stuff like that, and they take that back to their teams, and I think it's good. I think it was good. Their guys had a lot of fun with it.
Of course, wrapping it up to bring it all back into Raleigh, putting the Admirals Cup out there for all the fans to see, getting the All-Star uniforms, getting such a landmark tournament to Raleigh. What does that do for potential fandom and potential increase in attendance for all these NC State games coming up?
It's going to do nothing but make it better. They actually have season tickets now that you can buy. The fan base it's been big. They're seeing good quality schools come in. There's definitely an excitement, and it seems like people are coming to the games that, I'll see what this is about. And all of a sudden they realize, hey, this is a really competitive game, and then they'll bring a few people with them. And that's kind of how things multiply, right? You just get more guys coming in, more people coming in, and then they bring some people with them. And, it's a good game, and it's a good atmosphere, and you can't really ask for much more than that.
Before we have our next show, it's the big matchup against North Carolina. Any cry out to the fans to bring attendance, any type of record you want to set against the Tar Heels?
The more the merrier, you know. If we have to get the fire marshal to get some out, then that's not a bad thing. But yeah, I mean, I expect a big crowd. I know the guys have been talking about that. That's one of the games when the calendar comes out, everyone looks to, goes to, and tries to make time for that game. So yeah, it should be a really good game. We'll look forward to it.
We hope to see you out at the Iceplex as we continue to cover NC State hockey throughout the rest of the season. That will end our first episode of Season 3 here with Over the Boards for Mike Gazzillo. Coach, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
He's the man behind the mustache, and I am Drew Blevins. We hope that you'll join us for the next episode coming up at the end of November. Signing off, I'm Drew Blevins. Go Wolfpack.